Howdy, folks. Michael S. Robinson Sr. here, back with my take on what's happening in our world. Thank you for visiting my YouTube channel. Oh, how things have changed. As one who grew up through the 50s and 60s, I can't help but being shocked at the contrast between then and now. I remember the election of Dwight Eisenhower, saw how a former war hero easily coasted to a decisive win, and how the greatest moment of his presidency was his farewell speech to the American people, warning them of the hazard of the industrial-military alliance. I also have a clear recollection of how JFK, a Catholic, something the political sages had viewed as an impossibility, rose to the challenge of the growing Soviet threat and the presence of a new enemy just outside America's borders. Similarly, I will always remember how Jackie, Carolyn, and John Jr. quickly became America's darlings. The Cuban Missile Crisis was one of Kennedy's finest hours. In one of history's most tenuous moments, he had the good judgment to stand down, thus averting what could have been a global disaster. Can you imagine what would have happened had Trump been the man in charge? The specter of a smoking American wasteland is the thought that comes to my mind. And yes, I can tell you exactly where I was and what I was doing when Kennedy's life was so abruptly and violently taken. Since then, other presidents have come and gone, some good, most not so good, and each one of them has left his own particular residue in my brain. Jimmy Carter, bless his heart, was a good man. I think his win at the polls was largely because America was ready for a real believer, someone who had ethics and morals and would use them in making the difficult decisions ahead. Unfortunately, Carter, despite his kindness, honesty, and fastidiously careful decision-making process, was not a real leader. He could not be decisive because he constantly overthought the consequences of his choices. After 4 years of him, Americans were ready for a stronger man. They found one in Ronald Reagan. He knew how to lead. He knew how to charm. He wasn't afraid to make tough decisions, and he made more than his share of mistakes. Reaganomics was a disaster. Something tells me, though, when viewed from a broad historical perspective, Reagan will be remembered mostly as a real president, and no one will ever forget his "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." True to the dirty nature of political contests, Reagan stooped a bit from his characteristic grace, attacking Jimmy Carter with a mocking disdain and probably causing some supporters to question if he was a fine enough man to lead. Though mostly known for his gracious, self-deprecating modesty, Reagan's campaign insults cut right to the quick. "Jimmy Carter," he said, "asked me why I wanted his job. And I told him, I don't want your job. I want to be the President of the United States." The patently rude comment raised a lot of eyebrows, including mine. But Reagan's message was a glaring scoreboard for a president who had failed to show the most celebrated leadership trait, decisiveness. Not only was Reagan forceful and decisive, his career in acting provided him with an almost uncanny ability to connect with TV audiences. He knew how to engage his constituents, and he knew how to motivate others to action. Well, now it's 2020, and Donald Trump has blundered his way through 3 years of knee-jerk diplomacy. Miraculously, he has escaped what should have been his political end, driven by his rabid insistence that the Russians didn't help him win the 2016 election, something his fragile ego simply cannot handle. He was mistakenly set free by the Mueller report and has now shown Americans that a president can commit outright treason, lie, cheat, bribe, obstruct Congress and the courts, and claim he knew nothing about the hush money for his porn star dalliances, and still be sitting in the Oval Office. Frankly, I find Trump to be a truly remarkable man. I believe it is safe to say that no man has done what he has. It is the first time that a president with only an ego and the minuscule vestige of a brainstem has knee-jerked his way through a first term of internationally and domestically offensive decisions. His saving grace among his foaming at the mouth Christian right core is, though severely intellectually challenged, his crude and crass Neanderthalistic M.O. gives his supporters reassurance of that one essential trait of leadership. No one can ever claim that POTUS hasn't been decisive. The sad consequence is that his ill-advised or unadvised decisions have done everything but replace Old Glory with Russia's own version of the red, white, and blue. Just the other day, Trump complained that the South Korean film Parasite had taken the honors as the top movie of 2019. How bad were the Academy Awards this year? Trump asked a rally in Colorado Springs, Colorado. The winner is a movie from South Korea. What the hell was that all about? Trump asked. We got enough problems with South Korea with trade, and on top of it, they give them the best movie of the year? Any keen observer understands Trump's ire. After all, to appreciate the English subtitled Parasite requires certain skills, and unlike the cartoon shows he prefers to watch, literacy was the key to understanding the storyline. Every one of the Democratic presidential hopefuls should remember the story about Reagan. In the absence of a presidential leader and Trump's teetering destruction of our highest American values, no one should seek to take his job. What we need now is a real president, not a parasite who is systematically sucking our country dry. Thank you.